All right, good morning. We are on chapter 13, and today we're going to be talking about the rods of initiation. Chapter 12 was, we got into the two revelations. Now we're going through the process of initiation here, if we didn't know that already. And we're breaking it down. Yesterday was admittedly probably the most difficult section of the book. Honestly, it was for me. And today we are going to find out some, very interesting stuff. All right. The rods of initiation are of four kinds. One is cosmic, used by a cosmic logos in the initiations of a solar logos and of the three major planetary logoi. The second is systemic, used by a solar logos in the initiations of a planetary logos. With cosmic initiation, we have not to do. It concerns expansions of realization beyond even the ken of the highest initiate in our solar system. With systemic initiations, we are concerned only in trifling measure, for they are on so vast a scale that the average human mind cannot as yet envisage them. Man appreciates these initiations only insofar as they produce effects in the planetary scheme with which he may be concerned. Particularly is this so should the scheme in which he plays his microscopic part be the center of the logoic body receiving stimulation. When that is the case, the initiation of his own planetary logos takes place, and consequently he, as a cellular body, receives an added stimulation along with other sons of men. And then we're down to the third, which is planetary rod of initiation, used by a planetary logos for initiatory purposes, and for the third, fourth, and fifth major initiations with the two higher. At the planetary initiation, the rod of power wielded by the solar logos is charged with pure electrical force from Sirius and was received by our logos during the second period of creation from the hands of that great entity who is the presiding lord of the lords of karma. He is the repository of the law during manifestation, and he it is who is the representative in the solar system of that great brotherhood on Sirius, whose lodges are found functioning as the occult hierarchies in the different planets. Again, it is he who, with the solar logos to assist him, invests the various initiators with power, gives to them that word in secret, which enables them to draw down the pure electrical force with which their rods of office must be charged, and commits to their keeping the peculiar secret of their particular planetary scheme. And then fourth is the hierarchical, used by the occult hierarchy for minor initiations and for the first two initiations of the Manas by the Bodhisattva. When man individualized in Lemurian days, it was through the application of the rod of initiation to the logos of our earth chain, which touched into activity certain centers in his body with their corresponding groups. This application produced literally the awakening of the life to intelligent work on the mental plane. Animal man was conscious on the physical and on the astral planes. By the stimulation effected by the electric rod, this animal man awoke to consciousness on the mental. Thus, the three bodies were coordinated and the thinker enabled to function in them. So we're looking at this from the outside down again, from big to small, and how it affects the bigger system, and then how it affects the human. And you can see that if we went in reverse, we can kind of look at it in reverse too, because we're going from animal man to human to spiritual man, and all of these require an expansion of consciousness. And at each stage of that, we become more inclusive, with more understanding and intelligent understanding. We could look at it, I'm just spitballing here, just because this is in my mind. We can look at it like, at first, you become conscious of yourself, and then we question, we start questioning things, and that's the individualization process. Then we recognize the brotherhood of humanity, and that's a really key point, because the love of one begins to become the love for all, the love of all. And now we grasp that that we're all one, and on the physical plane, and then we move out from there, and then we're reminded that it's one with everything, and we get a sense for what that is. And then so now we're becoming more inclusive, where we're able to include more in our consciousness. And we're able to learn more about the human. At first we learn more about ourselves. We learn more about the human condition. We're learning more about the system. We're learning more about the macrocosm. It's really amazing. And we wouldn't want to, and we would not be able to do this at one quick shot. That would be too much. It wouldn't benefit us to do it that way. So there is this, we can see this process. All rods of initiation cause certain effects. One, they stimulate stimulation of the latent fires till they blaze. B, synthesize, or they cause synthesis of the certain fires. Synthesis of the fires through an occult activity that brings them within the radius of each other. And then C, increase of the vibratory activity of some center, whether in man, a heavenly man, or a solar logos. So that we can see the process is similar, whether it be for a man, heavenly man, or logos, solar logos. D, an expansion of all the bodies, but primarily of the causal body, which is, as we know, the soul or ego. And E is the arousing of the Kundalini fire, or the fire at the base of the spine, and the direction of its upward progression. This fire and the fire of Manas, or the mind, are directed along certain routes or triangles by the following of the rod as it moves in a specified manner. Now we're really talking about science. This is very scientific here. There is a definite occult reason under the laws of electricity behind the known fact that every initiate presented to the initiator is accompanied by two masters who stand one on either side of the initiate. The three of them together form a triangle which makes the work possible. The force of the rod is twofold, as its power terrific. Apart and alone, the initiate could not receive the voltage from the rod without serious hurt, but in triangular transmission comes safety. We need to remember here that two masters sponsor all applicants for initiation and represent two polarities of the electric all. Part of their function is to stand with applicants for initiation when they come before the Great Lord. When the rods are held in the hands of the initiator in his position of power, and at the stated seasons, they act as transmitters of electric force from very high levels, so high indeed that the flaming diamond at certain of the final initiations, the 6th and 7th, transmits force via the logos from outside the system altogether. This major rod is the one used on this planet, but within the system, there are several such rods of power, and they are to be found in 3 grades, if it may be so expressed. And this is imbuing those on the, that are receiving this with a level of light, radiation, more atomic energy, stimulation, call it, a spiritualization of the cells, bringing them into activity and stimulating them to begin working together in a different way. There's just so much going on here. 1 rod of initiation is used for the first 2 initiations and is wielded by the Great Lord. It is magnetized by the application of the flaming diamond, the magnetization being repeated for each New World teacher. There is a wonderful ceremony performed at the time that a New World teacher takes office, in which he receives his rod of power. The same rod as used since the foundation of our planetary hierarchy, and holds it forth to the Lord of the world, who touches it with his own mighty rod, causing a fresh recharging of its electric capacity. This ceremony takes place at Shambhala. And, maybe consider just for a second, and all the movies that discuss something like this. Or all of the carrying a staff, or carrying a certain scepter type of thing, or many little things like that may be the lower expression of what we're looking at here. And if you and certainly you'd understand, I think if you've ever participated in any ceremonies for any type of esoteric school or something. The rod of initiation, known as the flaming diamond, is used by Sunat Kumara, the one initiator. This rod lies hidden in the east and holds the fire hidden that radiates the wisdom religion. This rod was brought by the Lord of the world from Venus, and once in every world period, it is subjected to a similar process to that of the lesser rod, only this time it is recharged by the direction of the Logos himself, the Logos of the solar system. The exact location of this rod is known only to the Lord of the world and the Chohans of the rays, and being the talisman of this evolution, the Chohan of the second ray is, under the Lord of the world, its prime guardian, aided by the Deva Lord of the second plane. The Buddhas of activity are responsible for its custody, and under them the Chohan of the ray. It is produced only at stated times when specific work has to be done. It is used not only at the initiating of men, but at certain planetary functions, of which nothing is at present known. It has its place and function in certain ceremonies connected with the inner round and the triangle formed by the Earth, Mars, and Mercury. The purpose of the rods of power. In the scepter of a ruling monarch at this day is hidden in the symbolism of these various rods. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. You can't ever be thinking ahead of the master. It's not possible, right? So here we do have this, and we've seen it in cartoons. We've seen you know what, I want to invite kings and queens and all of this stuff. They are duly recognized as symbols of office and of power, but it is not generally appreciated that they are of electrical origin and that their true significance is concerned with the dynamic stimulation of all the subordinates in office who come under their touch, thus inspiring them to increased activity and service. And that service being service for the race. The great rod of power of the Logos himself is hidden in the sun. To recapitulate, the esoteric location of the various rods is as follows. The rod of the Bodhisattva lies hidden in the heart of the wisdom, that is, at Shambhala. And 2, the rod of the one initiator is hidden in the east, a definite planetary location. 3, the rod of the solar logos is hidden in the heart of the sun, that mysterious subjective sphere which lies back of our physical sun, and of which our physical sun is but the environing shield and envelopment. The rod of the cosmic logos associated with our solar logos is secreted in that central spot in the heavens around which our solar system revolves, and which is termed the central spiritual sun. And you know, we have to ask, these books are public. What is this? What and then, this is building quite the picture for us. We're being pulled to the mental plane, and we're being we're building this picture of what's going on, both in the outer expression and in the inner expression. So this is really quite a thing here that we're being exposed to, especially in the beginning, when I don't even want to say in the beginning. It's amazing at all points, but that we're allowed to know this essentially. So these secrets are. It would seem that these have been secrets for a very long time, and were just put to and given to us, when these books come out, which alludes to the to where we're at in this growth period. One rod is charged anew at Shambhala for each new world teacher. The rod of Sanat Kumara is charged afresh at each recurring world period, and therefore 7 times in the history of a planetary scheme. The Logoic rod of power is electrified at the recurrence of each new period of creation, or for each solar system through which the Logos manifests, as a man manifests through his physical body life. The first 2 ceremonies take place at Shambhala, the sacred point of planetary manifestation, that central location in our physical planet, which corresponds to the heart of a human being. Many of the places on the Earth's surface, for instance, which are famed for their healing properties, are thus noted because they are magnetized spots, and their magnetic properties demonstrate as healing influences. The recognition of these properties by man is but the preamble of a later and more definite recognition, which will eventuate when his etheric sight is normally developed. These magnetic spots are magnetized in 3 ways. By Sanat Kumara working through the Manu, This occurs when it is desirable to form a central magnetic point, which by its attractive power will draw into a coherent whole some race, nation, or large organization. Every nation has its magnetic point, formed in etheric matter by the application of the flaming diamond to the ethers. It is the national heart and the basis of the national character. Usually the chief city of a nation is built up around it, but this is not invariably so. And it's so interesting here that, we're drawn to this magnetically. And Earth is, I heard Michael Robbins discussing this from Moria Federation, and Earth is the school of magnetic, what is the word that he used? We are students learning, the lessons of polarity, the school of magnetic response. And, that's very telling. We're in, we've all, we're in a school. What school? Somebody tell us what school. We're in the school of magnetic response. But now we're talking here about this, nations having this magnetic point, and it's to draw central point, to draw into a coherent whole some race, nation, or large organization. So the magnetic spots are magnetized, one, by the way, we just discussed, by two, by Sanat Kumara working through the Bodhisattva. In this case, the electric force in the rod is wielded in order to draw closer together those influences which demonstrate in the great religions of the world. The lesser rod of power is used here in conjunction with the greater. By their means, the attractive quality or keynote of any religion is struck, and of any organization with a religious basis. And then thirdly, by Sanat Kumara working through the Mahachohan, by the wielding of the rod of power, the magnetic focal points of those great organizations which affect the civilization and the culture of a people are brought into coherent activity. All physical plane organization, governmental, religious, or cultural, is the working out of inner forces and causes, and before they definitely appear in physical manifestation, a focalization, if it might be so expressed, of these influences and energies takes place on etheric levels. And we know that there's always a spiritual, reasoning for things happening, mainly. So the causes of things stems from the spiritual, not the other way around. The organization of the Freemasons is a case in point. It has two magnetic centers, one of which is in Central Europe. Okay, we're not going to go into that. One of which is in Central Europe. In all cases cited, the Lord of the World was the officiating agent, as is ever the case in the founding of great and important movements. In all lesser movements for the helping of the race initiated by the masters working through their disciples, the aid of the Bodhisattva is invoked and the lesser rod of power employed. When disciples initiate a movement on a relatively tiny scale, the master with whom they work can similarly assist them, and though he wields no rod of power, he has methods whereby he can stimulate and cause to cohere the little endeavor of the faithful followers. Thus, in all departments of human life, the rods of initiation and the words of power are used. The entire world government functions under law and order, and the whole scheme is interdependent. To return to the subject of human initiation and these rods of power, at a time of the initiation ceremony, After the two great revelations, there comes a moment of utter silence. In the interim, the initiate realizes within himself the meaning of peace. He stands, as it were, in a void or in a vacuum, wherein naught seemingly can reach him. He stands betwixt earth and heaven for a brief second, conscious of naught but the meaning of things as they are, realizing his own essential divinity and the part which he must play when he again returns to earth service from the council chambers of heaven, from the council chamber of heaven. He is conscious of no anxiety, fear, or doubt. He has contacted the divine presence and has seen the vision. He knows that what he has to do and how he must do it, and peace and joy unutterable fill his heart. This is an interlude of stillness before a period of renewed activity, which begins at the moment that the rod is applied. Whilst he has been thus withdrawn within himself, with all his forces centered in his heart, the attendant lodge of masters has been performing certain ceremonies and chanting certain words preparatory to the appearance of the initiator upon the throne and the wielding of the rod. The Hierophant has hitherto been present, but the work has been handled by the lodge and the sponsors. He now ascends to the place of power, and the rod is brought to him by its legitimate custodians. So this is just like any other ceremony, essentially, that's done, especially like a military ceremony. That would be a good expression of this. You know, there's a lot of things taking place during any sort of military ceremony, whether it be an award ceremony, a promotion ceremony, a change of command ceremony. I mean, the military is a great reflection of the higher, essentially. So we can look at these things in the military and the way the government is set up and the way offices are, the heads over certain offices. We're looking at a great reflection of what is on the inner side of things. Yeah, all of these things are happening, during ceremonies here on the physical plane. But we, and we can look at it like they're being done, and it, having been in the military, I see that as a great benefit now, because I see the reflections on the physical plane of these things. It's nice, right? There's meaning in that, and significance, I want to say, and for good reason. It is not possible here to publish the details of the next stage beyond using the description as embodied in the words, "Fire descends from heaven." Through the utterance of certain words and phrases, which are one of the secrets of initiation, and which vary with each initiation, the electrical force to be employed descends upon the rod, passing through the heart and the hand of the initiator to the three who stand in triangular relation to the throne of office. They receive it in turn and circulate it by active will through their hearts, thus passing it to the sponsors. They again, by an act of will, prepare to transmit it to the center in the body of the initiate, which is, according to the initiation, to receive stimulation. Then succeeds an interesting interlude wherein the united wills of the hierarchy are blended in order to transmit that force which the rod has put into circulation. The Hierophant utters the word, and the force is literally thrown into the initiate's body and centers, passing down through the centers on the mental plane via the astral centers to the centers on etheric levels, which finally absorb it. This is the stupendous moment for the initiate, and brings to him a realization of the literal absolute truth of the phrase, God is a consuming fire. Now, this, I just want to make sure I'm going to say this in advance. Let's see here. I'm going to say this. Realization of absolute phrase. Passing through the centers on the mental plane via the astral centers to the centers on etheric levels, which finally absorb it. Now, when we talk about etheric levels, this is felt in the physical body. Some level of this, right? So we know that our God is a consuming fire at that point. And what a humbling thing it is, right? To know these things that we're talking about there. He knows past all gainsaying that fiery energy and electric force constitute the sum total of all that is. And this is something we end up, we will eventually all find out for ourselves. He is literally bathed in the fires of purification. He sees fire on all sides, pouring out through the rod, circulating around the triangle, and passing through the bodies of the two sponsoring adepts. For a brief second, the entire lodge of masters and initiates, standing in their ceremonial places without the triangle or outside, are hidden from view by a wall of pure fire. The initiate sees no one save the Hierophant and is aware of nothing but a fiery blaze of pure white flame, which burns but destroys not, which intensifies the activity of every atom in his body without disintegrating, and which purifies his entire nature. The fire tries his work of what sort it is, and he passes through the flame. It kind of gives new meaning to that song, I've been through the fire, or pardon me while I burst into flames, or I'm a hunk of burning love. Pink says, just like fire. I mean, now let's say it's maybe not the same. There's a lot of songs that talk about fire, man. It's not, it's incredible. There's a lot, there's a lot going on here. If you haven't seen these things, it's in front of us everywhere we go, and you could say every word uttered can be understood from a much deeper perspective. How much about flames have you heard? How much? It's just, it can't be. We can't sit here and even mention them all. I mean, every Burning Man. Let's say they're reflections that come out through. It's just we need to look at this and see, and now we can know the deeper meanings of this. And it's given to us to know the deeper meanings, which is even more amazing. And then eventually we find out that our God is a consuming fire, and then certainly we're purified, it would seem, right? And our life changes would then change, begin to change rather quickly. The effect of the application of the rod. A, upon the initiate's body. Okay, so we're going to go deeper into this now. So let's do it. This is exciting. The effect is fourfold and lasting, but varies according to the initiation taken. The action of the rod is most carefully and scientifically regulated, and at each succeeding initiation, the voltage is increased, and the activity of the resulting fire and its heat intensified. By the application of the rod, the initiate finds, 1, the activity of each individual atom in the various bodies is increased, resulting in a greater degree of nervous energy and elasticity and resistance, which will serve him in good stead in the strenuous life of service ahead. And we talked about this earlier again. So, it's like we want to have these conversations as we're reading these things, but we're not wrong. So, so that's good, right? These atoms are literally spiritualized. The matter of an undesirable type in his body is shaken loose, and the atomic wall somewhat destroyed, making the atoms radioactive, if it might be so expressed, and it can be expressed. It's easy for us to understand it that way, and therefore more easily eliminated. 3, the fires of the body are stimulated, and the total energy of the threefold lower man is coordinated so that there is less waste of energy and a greater coherence and uniformity in action. Yeah, we're working together now. It's becoming, a unit, a machine. I don't know. It's fantastic. We're not. What's the word I'm looking for? We're balanced. Everything's functioning at this point kind of like it's supposed to be. Certain areas aren't overstimulated anymore, and now we're purring. Our engine's purring, right? We're running clean at this point. And 4, the aligning of the various bodies in connection with the causal or egoic body is aided, and thus continuity of consciousness and receptivity to the behests of the ego become possible. The initiate will find when he returns from the ceremony and takes up his work in the world that the stimulation received will bring about in his bodies a period of great activity and also of strife. This strife persists into the point of victory, will result in his taking out of his body undesirable matter and building in new and better material. He will find that his powers for service are enormously increased and his nervous energy intensified so that he can draw upon reserves of force and service hitherto unsuspected. He will find also that the response of the physical brain to the voice of the higher self and its receptivity to the higher and subtler impressions is greatly furthered. Eventually, through the work accomplished, he will succeed in eliminating all matter of subatomic character and will then build bodies of substance of the highest subplane on each plane. He will become aware that all energies can be consciously and constructively controlled, that he knows the real meaning of continuity of consciousness and can function simultaneously on 3 planes with full inner realization. And that seems to be very clear in a sense. That we're not, there's no words being minced there. You will we will know the real meaning of continuity of consciousness and can function simultaneously on the three planes with full inner realization. That's cut and dry. Upon the causal or egoic body, we're getting into. Let's see, we just did upon the these are the effects of the application of the rod. We already did upon the initiate's bodies, and now we're going to do upon the causal or egoic body. It is only possible to touch very briefly upon the effect of the application of the rod to the causal body of the initiate. The subject is immense and will be more fully dealt with in a treatise on cosmic fire. There are just two ways in which some idea of the fundamental truth will be conveyed to the mind of the student, which we might now consider. First, the student should bear in mind the interesting significance of the fact that he, on the physical plane, is a functioning personality with known and realized characteristics, and yet withal that he is a subjective life who uses that personality as a medium of expression, and who, through the agency of the physical, emotional, and mental bodies which comprise the threefold lower man, makes his contacts with the physical plane and thus develops. Sorry, I have to ponder on these things a little bit as well, right? This is, this is what, this is a pretty big leap, and it's a big expansion there too, I want to say, because like we talked about, we're having little expansions of consciousness daily. When we realize that we're a functioning personality on the earth, on the physical plane, and then we see that this is back behind, and we know this in our, and we allow for it, and then we know it through experience at some point. These things are huge, and it's giving us more food for expansion. The same general idea of development must be now extended to the higher self, the ego on its own plane. The ego is a great solar angel who is the medium of expression for the monad or pure spirit. Just as is the personality for the ego on the lower level, so a reflection of a reflection. From the point of view of man in the three worlds, this ego, or solar lord, is eternal. He persists throughout the entire cycle of incarnations, just as personality persists during the tiny physical life cycle. Nevertheless, this period of existence is only relatively permanent, and the day dawns when the life which expresses itself through the medium of the ego, the thinker, the solar lord, or Manasadeva, seeks to loose itself from even this limitation and to return to the source from which it originally emanated. So the drop merges back into the ocean, or the ocean merges into the drop, right? The life then, which manifested as a solar angel, and which, through inherent energy, held together through long ages the form egoic, withdraws itself gradually, and the form slowly dissipates. The lesser lives of which it has been constituted return to the general fount of Deva substance, plus the increased consciousness and activity which is theirs through the experience of being built into a form and utilized by a still higher and utilized by a still higher aspect of existence. So these things are, there's no waste. It's going, everything is it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's being used. It's going back to be used. Similarly, in the case of the personality, when the life egoic withdraws, the threefold lower self dissipates. The little lives, which form the body of what has been called the lunar self, in contradistinction to the solar self, being but its reflection, are absorbed into the general reservoir of deva substance of a lower vibration to that which composed the body egoic. Similarly, also their evolution has been furthered through having been built into a form for the use of the higher self. Their evolution has been furthered as well. So everything's evolving. Through the application of the rod of initiation, the work of separating the spiritual self from the higher self is furthered. And the imprisoned life gradually escapes, whilst the causal body is slowly absorbed or dissipated. And like Rumi says, and I've quoted Rumi 3 days in a row, which is interesting now. He says, take an axe to the prison walls and escape. Do it now. This has led to the expression, sometimes used in occult books, of the cracking of the causal body at each initiation, and to the idea of the inner central fire gradually breaking through and destroying the confining walls, and also of the destruction of the Temple of Solomon through the withdrawal of the Shekinah. All these phrases are symbolic wording and are attempts to convey to the mind of man fundamental truth from different angles. All right, well, here's another angle, I suppose, is Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall and he had a great fall, right? And nobody could put him back together. So it's also, you know, can be seen in nature by the, you know, in regard to the butterfly, right? Coming out of the cocoon. And in many other things, just or the flower blooming even. By the time the fourth initiation has been reached, the work of destruction is accomplished, the solar angel returns to his own place, having performed his function, and the solar lives seek their point of emanation. The life within the form mounts up, then in triumph, to the bosom of its Father in heaven, just as the life within the physical body at the moment of death seeks its source, the ego, and this likewise in 4 stages. 1, by the withdrawal from the dense physical body, 2, by the withdrawal from the etheric body, 3, later vacating the astral body, and 4, a final leaving of the mental body. Another way of emphasizing the same truth is to regard the egoic body as a center of force, a wheel of energy, or a lotus, and to picture it as a lotus with 9 petals, hiding within these petals a central unit of 3 petals. These in their turn secrete the central life, or the jewel in the lotus. As evolution proceeds, these 3 circles of 3 petals gradually unfold, having a simultaneous effect on one or other of the central 3. These 3 circles are called respectively the petals of sacrifice, love, and knowledge. At the initiation, the rod is applied to the petals in a scientific manner and regulated according to ray and tendency. This brings about the opening of the central bud, the revelation of the jewel, the withdrawal of that jewel from the casket which it has so long shielded it, and its transference to the crown, as it is occultly called, meaning its return to the monad whence it came. We must clearly recognize that all the above is but an attempt, through the limiting agency of words, to describe the method of the rites whereby spiritual liberation is finally achieved in this cycle. First through the method of evolutionary unfoldment or gradual development, and then in the final stages through the rod of initiation. And now we're going to get into the effect on upon the centers. And this is really telling stuff for us, I want to say. You know, the fact that we found this information, the fact that it's resonating, and the fact that, you know, these things are unfolding in our consciousness as we read and learn these things, and in our own experience. It's incredible. All right, at the time that initiation is taken, the centers are all active, and the lower four, which correspond to the personality, are beginning the process of translating the fire into the three. The dual revolution in the lower centers is clearly to be seen, and the three higher are commencing to be similarly active. By the application of the rod of initiation at the time of the initiation ceremony, definite results are achieved in connection with the centers, which might be enumerated as follows. The fire at the base of the spine is definitely directed to whichever center is the object of special attention. This varies according to Ray or the specialized work of the initiate. The center has its activity intensified, its rate of revolution increased, and certain of the central spokes of the wheel brought into more active radiance. These spokes of the wheel, or these petals of the lotus, have a close connection with the different spirilla in the permanent atoms. And the spirilla are discussed, you know, I want to say by Annie Besant, and also in, I think it's Rays and Initiations, and probably a treatise on cosmic fire. I'm not able to talk on that all that much. I don't, so we're gonna have to come back to that later in our studies. These spokes of the wheel, or these petals of the lotus, have a close connection with the different spirilla in the permanent atoms. For instance, and in their stimulation comes into play one or more of the corresponding spirilla in the permanent atoms on the three lower planes. After the third initiation, a corresponding stimulation takes place in the permanent atoms of the triad, leading to a coordination of the Buddhic vehicle and the transference of the lower polarization into the higher. By the application of the rod of initiation, the downflow of force from the ego to the personality is tripled, the direction of that force being dependent upon whether the centers receiving attention are the etheric or the astral at the first and second initiations, or whether the initiate is standing before the Lord of the world. In the latter case, his mental centers or their corresponding force vortices on higher levels will receive stimulation. When the world teacher initiates at the first and second initiations, the direction of the triadal force is turned to the vivification of the heart and throat centers in their position of synthesizing the lower. When the one initiator applies the rod of his power, the downflow is from the monad, and And though the throat and heart intensify vibration as a response, the main direction of the force is to the 7 head centers. And finally, at liberation, to the radiant head center above, synthesizing the lesser 7 head centers. The centers at initiation receive a fresh access of vibratory capacity and of power, and this results in the exoteric life as 1, sensitiveness and refinement of the vehicles, which may result at first in much suffering to the initiate, but which produce a capacity to respond that far outweighs the incidental pain. And 2, a development of psychic faculty that again may lead to temporary distress, but which eventually causes a recognition of the one self in all selves, which is the goal of endeavor. 3, a burning away of the etheric web through the gradual arousing of Kundalini and its correct geometrical progression, and a resultant continuity of consciousness that enables the initiate consciously to utilize time as a factor on the planes of evolution. 4, a gradual grasp of the law of vibration as an aspect of the basic law of building. The law of attraction is brought about, and the initiate learns consciously to build, to manipulate thought matter for the perfecting of the plans of the logos, to work in mental essence, and to apply the law on mental levels and thereby affect the physical plane. Motion originates cosmically on cosmic levels, and in the microcosm, the same will be seen. There is an occult hint here, pondered on will reveal much. Okay, well, should we read it again? I think we should. Let's see here. A gradual grasp of the law of vibration as an aspect of the basic law of building, the law of attraction, is brought about. The initiate learns consciously to build, to manipulate thought matter for the perfecting of the plans of the logos, to work in mental essence, and to apply the laws on mental levels, and thereby affect the physical plane. And this has a lot to do with creating thought forms and giving them proper attention and power and focus. And we've talked about this earlier in this book as well, about how, you know, when unadvanced thought forms fall apart, and we gradually can hold them together and see them through to fruition later. Motion originates cosmically on cosmic levels, and in the microcosm, the same will be seen. There is an occult hint here, pondered on, will reveal much, and energy follows thought, and that always seems to come up. At initiation, at the moment of application of the rod, the initiate consciously realizes the meaning of the law of attraction in form building and in the synthesis of the 3 fires. Yeah, you know, aspiration is actually, I want to say, part of this. Upon his ability, or is it, you know, it's just pulling, right? We're built. There's this drawing in, and goes both ways. I don't know. I don't have good words for what I was thinking there. Upon his ability to retain that realization and himself to apply the law will depend his power to progress. Will depend his power to progress. The Hierophant transmits higher monastic energy to the initiate so that he is enabled consciously to know and recognize the plan for his group center through the immensely increased stimulation. This force descends from the monastic permanent atom via the antikarana and is directed to whichever center the Hierophant under the law should be stimulated. The initiator stabilizes the force and regulates its flow as it circulates through the egoic body, so that when the work of unfoldment is accomplished, the seventh principle at the heart of the lotus can stand revealed. After each initiation, the lotus is more unfolded, and the light from the center begins to blaze forth, a light or fire which ultimately burns through the three enshrining petals and permits the full inner glory to be seen. And the electric fire of spirit to be manifested. As this is brought about on the second subplane of the mental plane, that's from the top down, whereon the egoic lotus is now situated, and that can be seen in the Constitution of Man chart where we're talking about here. A corresponding stimulation takes place in the dense substance which forms the petals or wheels of the center on the astral and etheric levels. Yeah, and we can see these things if we look at the chart. Because I think we had said yesterday, or it might have been yesterday, in order to, or maybe I read this separately. At the third initiation, you're master over the lower four subplanes of the physical, astral, and mental. And then, no, we did talk about this at some point. Might have been a couple of days. But the top three are more advanced on each of those. Right? And so, we see that their use is of higher use essentially, and the soul sitting on the third subplane of the mental plane, I say at some point is shifted up to the second subplane of the mental plane, and we'll be working with those levels on the lower as well, so that they all work together. There's a correspondence there, is what we're saying. Okay, well, that, my friends, was the application of the rods and how they affect each, how they affect everything pretty much on the way down. And we saw how it affected, when we see how it affects the human, we saw that how it affects the larger system as well. And we're now starting to see how this works and what the results of it are. Right? And it's generally all, expansions and, for service. And additional, power, essentially, on the planes. And through, use of energy. Very humbling. But okay, well, good stuff. And we'll be back at it tomorrow. Is chapter 14, which is the administration of the oath. So we'll get into that. All right, thank you. Have a great Sunday, or whichever day you're watching it.